Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Hockey Writers Roundtable season preview show. We are up to the Nashville Predators now, and we only have a handful of teams left going through our previews, and the season is just around the corner. I've got Alex Wauthy here from the Hockey Writers. Alex, how's it going? As hockey is almost here.
Yeah, I'm doing awesome, Matthew. Thanks so much for having me on. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Like I say, hockey is I love it this time of year when hockey's back. It's always such a long off season, and you miss it. And now, even if it's just preseason games, I love watching it. I'm really good. I'm really happy. So,
Yeah. Yeah,
all
so
right.
am I.
Well, let's get to the Nashville Predators, and
Mhm.
team that didn't make the playoffs last season, but made a pretty big push at the end. Even though they sold at the deadline. I mean, they traded a lot of guys but ended up
Mhm.
still pushing their way towards a playoff spot. I mean, fell short, but changed up their front office. Got Barry Trotz now as the GM, taking over from David Poile was since the beginning, and now it's Barry Trotz's team. So I made a few changes, and we'll start with the forward group and
Yeah.
talk about probably their biggest acquisition in Ryan O'Reilly in free agency coming over from the Toronto Maple Leafs, previously of the St. Louis Blues. Looks to be their top line center as it looks right now because they did buy out a couple centermen that were there, Ryan Johansson and Matt Duchene, who are now elsewhere.
Mhm.
What do you think Ryan O'Reilly is going to bring to this team? I mean, he is 32. He's not the player he used to be, but he's still a
Yeah.
pretty big piece.
No, Ryan O'Reilly, initially I was quite shocked to see the Predators go out and sign him, but I think he's going to be a great addition to the team. I think first and foremost what he brings is that veteran leadership that you really need. The Nashville Predators, they do have some veterans, but they have a lot of youth coming up in their system. The Luke Evangelistas, the Philip Tomasinos. So you
Mm-hmm.
really want a good veteran presence who's been one of the top players in the league for so long now to kind of help them get there. And he's also going to bring very good defense. Barry Trotz loves his defense. So he's definitely going to help on the defensive end. He is not as fast as, you'd maybe like. You kind of saw that in the Toronto Maple Leafs playoff series. He was a little slow. He was but he still brought that good defensive presence. I think if you pair him with, let's say, like a Luke Evangelista, maybe a Philip Tomasino, someone who is a little bit faster, a little younger, I think it could be a really, really good fit.
Yeah, and his leadership too. Like he's
Hmm.
captain in St. Louis for a few seasons there, and perennial Selke finalist. He
Yeah.
won it, I believe, one season as well. He is a very good all around centerman, and like you
Yes.
say, he's not the fastest guy. I don't know if he was fast even when in his
Hmm.
prime. I mean,
Yeah.
a good skater, but not you're not going to blow by guys. But yeah, O'Reilly, it's probably the biggest guy. They also added Gustav Nyquist, and
Yeah.
he may move the needle a bit. What do you think about Nyquist? I mean, he did battle injury last season, came back at the end of the season, got acquired by the Minnesota Wild. Was pretty good for them at the
He
end of
was.
there, and I believe he played in the playoffs as well. What do you think about him being added?
Yeah, Gustav Nyquist again, another he's 34, so another older guy. He did have 5 points in six playoff
Mhm.
games with the Wild. So he can score. I think that's the big thing with the Predators is they've always been a pretty defensively sound team. They have excellent goaltending. It's always the forwards, the offense they've struggled figuring out a little bit. And I think Gustav Nyquist, while he was injured, he's recovering. I don't think you can put too much pressure on him. I think he could be a good middle six winger. Put him on that second, third line, put him on the power play, and he'll put up some points. I'm thinking maybe 40-ish points. I think that'd be a good bar to set for him coming back from injury.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I don't think the pressure is too high on him. But again, another good addition. I don't think you're always good to add more offense to a team, especially one who was pretty bad offensively last year. I don't think I'm being too harsh in saying that.
No, I mean it's funny because the Predators did have some good. I mean, Duchene and Johansson were supposed to be really
Hmm.
good offensive players, especially Duchene, who
Yeah.
had a really good season last, like not this past season, but the season before. kind of fell off a bit. But these guys are being added. There's in a semi retool, maybe. I don't know if I don't want to call it a rebuild because I don't think they're rebuilding.
No.
I think they're kind of trying to find a new core of guys. Like they still have Philip Forsberg, probably still one of the best players in the NHL, under that $8.5 million cap hit. But I mean, he certainly can live up to that. Do you have any other storylines you're kind of watching? You got Gurianov. He's added to.
Yeah.
I mean, it's depth piece. He could be good. He's 26. He's not old by any means. So, do you have anything else you're kind of watching throughout training camp and the preseason early on here?
Yeah, I think one of the big things I've noticed is, with the coaching change and Andrew Brunette, bringing in a more offensively minded coach. I think many Predators fans I was seeing on social media get excited. They're moving away from this defensive style of John Hines. But then, during the first few preseason games, they're shut out by the Florida Panthers. They only scored 1 goal against the Lightning last night, or I guess that would be September 26th, I believe. Yeah, September 27th. Sorry, it would be September 27th. They only scored 1 goal against the Lightning. In another game against the Panthers, they only scored 2. They've, despite bringing in an offensive coach, you mentioned, getting rid of Johansson, and Duchesne, and offense is still going to be a problem. They're not scoring much in preseason, and that's kind of the talk of the town in Nashville is they lack offensive firepower still to this day.
Yeah, and the thing is about like Barry Trotz, obviously not the coach, but he's when he was the coach, he got like so much out of a bunch of guys that he never really had the most offensive guys on the team, but he still was able to get them to play together as a group and could score enough. They weren't a powerhouse, but they would win games and make the playoffs. So, he's now the GM. He brings in his own coach now. I don't know. We'll see how Brunette kind of coaches the team early on, but if he's Barry Trotz's guy, you're going to see him bring the team together, right? So It's going to be interesting to watch.
Yeah, no, and I'm excited to see. I'm really curious to see the dynamic between Brunette and Trotz as the season goes on. One's Trotz is one of the best coaches I think the NHL has ever seen, and you have Brunette, who's a very good offensive coach. I'm excited to see what he does on the defensive end with Trotz kind of looking at his every move.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's move to the defense, and bringing back a lot of the same guys from last season, but added Luke Schenn. He's kind of had a bit of a resurgence. He was in Vancouver last season and the Maple Leafs, but in Vancouver is where he kind of turned his career around and became a really good top 4 defenseman. I mean, he was playing with Quinn Hughes a lot of the time and meshed really well with him. I don't know what he's been paired with in the preseason. I'll let you talk about that, but he could pair with a guy like Roman Josi, similar type offensive defenseman. What do you think about this defensive group going into the season?
The defensive group. Look, Nashville's always had a great decor. You have Roman Josi headlining it, but I think Luke Schenn, what he brings aside from his, defensive ability, like you said, his career resurgence, is hits. He led the league in hits last season. You have Jeremy Lauzon, who's also on the Predators defensive core. He also was up there in hits. So this Predators offensive core is mean. They're going to hit everything that moves. And then you kind of have Roman Josi, the offensive dynamo. He almost scored 100 points a couple seasons ago. Unfortunately, he was injured last season, but Roman Josi is kind of going to be the offensive anchor, while I think the addition of Luke Schenn, again, surprising, similar to the Ryan O'Reilly addition, where it's, I didn't think that we'd be seeing the Predators kind of load up on these veteran guys, but I think Luke Schenn, a pairing with Roman Josi, it makes perfect sense, similar to how you mentioned Quinn Hughes in Vancouver. He can kind of be the anchor and let Roman Josi run wild. Not that Roman Josi's bad at defense; he's great at defense. But I think the more chips you can push in Josi's offensive deck, the better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean their whole defense, it is mean. It is for sure. And they got some other offensive guys like Tyson Barrie. Dante Fabro is a bit of an interesting guy. I mean, he was more of an up and coming guy. He's now,
Yeah.
I don't know, he's been in trade rumors, right? Too. So he's going to be guy I'll be watching is Fabro.
Yeah, Fabro, like you said, he was a bit promising. He had a very good 2021-22 season, 24 points in 66 games. But last season, he did take that step back offensively from 24 points to 11. So only 11 points in 79 games. And, he was okay defensively. He wasn't bad by any means, but he didn't really take that jump. And I feel like his, you know, progression in the NHL isn't linear, but
Mhm.
it's definitely concerning when you have a now 25-year-old defenseman still not 100% sure where his place is in a top six.
Yeah, that he's going to be one to watch. I think
Hmm.
throughout the beginning of the season, around the deadline, who knows? He may be a guy that they'll move. That's going to be something to watch for sure.
Hmm.
All right, goaltending. Now they didn't. Their starter still UC Saros, probably one of the
Of course.
best in the NHL. Kevin Lankinen backing him up, and then they've got the up and comer Yaroslav Askarov in the minors. So obviously, if Saros is the starter, what do you think about this tandem going in?
I personally believe it's one of the best tandems in the league. I mean, when you have a goaltender like UC Saros, who I'd say it's pretty undeniable that he's a top five goaltender in the league. I think where you have him in the top five is ultimately your choice, but I'd say he's pretty firm in the top five. And then you have Kevin Lankinen, who, he had a 916 save percentage last season, 2.75 goals against average. He's a sneaky good backup.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I know the Predators, like I said, like we mentioned, they're a very good defensive team. They're mean, they're going to clear bodies in front of the nets and make their goaltending, make their lives a little easier. But having a 916 save percentage as a backup to me is pretty impressive in the NHL, especially where, scoring's up. You have McDavid going for 150 points now every season. And I think being able to have two quality goaltenders who can one can win you a game and the other one's not going to lose you a game is super important. And then you have, Yaroslav Askarov. I think he could see NHL time this season. I don't think that's out of the question. And I think he likely will get in a few games. But I think leaving him in the AHL, the American Hockey League, with the Milwaukee Admirals, the Predators affiliate, I think getting him one more season, just to kind of, really build up that confidence, really kind of hone in on his craft and kind of just make him the proper backup next season, I think is, in my opinion, the best route to go for the Predators.
Yeah, I have to agree with that. I mean, I don't like rushing goaltenders. I'd
Mm-hmm.
rather them play in the AHL most of the time and just get their feet wet, get ready, and goaltending is such an interesting position to watch
Mm-hmm.
develop because these guys, they're not quick. I mean, they're not everyone's not Carey Price who gets into the
No.
NHL like I believe 18 or 19 years old and looks pretty good already. These guys need seasoning, and
Mm-hmm.
Askarov's only 21, so keep him there. You have a great starter. You don't need to rush this guy, so leave him there.
Exactly. Exactly.
Okay,
Yeah.
now the Central Division is a bit of an interesting one. They got ones at the top: Colorado, Dallas. Teams that seem to make the playoffs all the time: Minnesota. You got those teams at the bottom: Arizona, who's kind of on the upwards
Yeah.
trend maybe now. Where does Nashville stack up in this? I would say pretty tough division right now.
I would say it's tough. I don't want to seem like a downer, but I can't see the Predators making the playoffs with this division. I mean, I'd say the Avalanche, the Stars, and the Wild are no one's a lock in the NHL, but I think those three definitely clear the Predators. And when it comes to the Predators, like you said, the Blackhawks, they just got Bedard. Taylor
Mhm.
Hall, I think, is going to be a huge addition. You have the Coyotes, they're a young upstart team. I think that the Predators probably finish in the bottom three of that division. And I think that might be playing a little safe saying bottom three. And that's not that they don't have great defense, great goaltending. It just that division is so hard to get points in. And then the Jets, there's rumors about the Winnipeg Jets
Yeah.
potentially selling off Connor Hellebuck this season. They stood strong. They're looking to make the playoffs. The Blues, what's going on with the Blues? They didn't really commit to a rebuild either. So I think there's the chance the Predators sneak into the wild card at the absolute best, but I think it might be another season without the playoffs in Nashville.
Yeah, it is a very tough division. I think there may be a changing of the guard soon where you got
Mm-hmm.
Chicago and moving to the top again, especially if Bedard hits like what he's supposed to. Arizona with Logan Cooley. I mean, Nashville could be in that mix. We'll talk a bit about some of the prospects later on, but they do have some good young guys coming up. So we'll see where they kind of all falls into place going forward. That's for sure.
Yeah.
All right, moving on to our quick fire round, and these are all fun questions like to throw at you here. So let's start with our breakout stars. Who do you got as a breakout star this season for the Predators?
I'm going to play it really safe. Luke Evangelista, 15 points in 24 games in his little call-up last season. He should make the team out of camp. Good right winger, drafted in 2020. And I think he's going to really inject some youth into that top six. And I don't think he's going to be necessarily the saving grace of their offense. I think that's way too unfair to put that much pressure on him. But I could see him going for about 50, maybe 60 points if he really clicks with one of Novak or O'Reilly.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he's going to be the breakout star. Now, is it a little cheating, I'd say, picking the rookie that's pretty hyped up in the city to be the breakout star? Probably. I'll admit that. It's a little safe. But I really like his odds to be an immediate impact contributor on this team. And I think seeing him look so just poised, his poise was amazing last season. He brought a lot more offense than I think many thought he would. I think he's going to impress, and I think, well, I don't think he's going to necessarily be a finalist for the Calder. I think some people are going to give him his props, and I'm excited to see that.
That Calder race is just insane. It's going to be really, really tough this season. There's so many different guys. Evangelista could definitely be in that mix, but he's going to have a lot of competition. That's for sure. All right, someone that needs to bounce back from last season. A team that doesn't make the playoffs, there's probably some guys that'll fall into this category.
Yeah. Like we mentioned earlier, Dante Fabro, like I said, he had a pretty good 2021-22 season. And then last year, as I said, 11 points, 79 games, -4. Offense isn't everything for a defenseman, but you need something. And his defensive progress, his offensive progress, it kind of all just stalled. He's, I'd say, maybe an average third pair defenseman. And I think if he can really come into his craft, he's only, he's still young. He was only drafted in 2016, I believe. And he's still young enough to where he could definitely be a late bloomer and bounce back and turn into the top 4 right-handed defenseman that I think many people thought he could be and still think he can be. So I'd say he's my big bounce. I think he's the kind of the guy that needs to come back if the Predators do want to try to sneak into that wild card.
Yeah, having a third pairing defenseman that can put up some points, that's a big plus for your defensive core. And we'll see what Fabro can do this season. All right, something that can be an X factor. It doesn't have to be a player. It can be the coaching staff, power play, whatever. But what do you got as an X factor this season?
I have Andrew Brunette, and like I said, they're really struggling to score in the preseason. However, it is the preseason, so I don't think you want to read too much into that. But if Andrew Brunette can figure out this Predators offense, who was in the bottom half of the league, I believe, bottom half of the league, bottom 7, I believe, and he can turn them around to just become an average offense, that's all we're asking. 16th, 17th, hover around there. Hey, maybe go for 14th best in the league. If he can work this offense, and turn them into an average level offense that can score on most nights, you're not really relying on Juuse Saros. You're not relying on like the Roman Yossi's and the Ryan McDonoughs of the world to shut down the opposing team's top players. I think this team could be scary if he can influence Luke Evangelista, Juuso Parssinen, Tomasino. If Tomasino gets more time this season, Thomas Novak, if he keeps it up, there's a lot of potential here on the offensive end. And I think Andrew Brunette's a really good player to try to get as much of that out of them. So I think he's my X factor. And then, of course, what's happening with Tyson Barrie too on the offensive end. I think the big thing is offense. Tyson Barrie only has 1 year left. I think he might get traded, but I think that's a question that will be answered in a little bit.
All right. Oh, before we get to the trades, let's talk about some young guys. And, there's some moving pieces. You could get one of these guys. rookie or prospect that could surprise and make the lineup and that we're not expecting to?
Yeah, so for the Predators prospects, I think, Philip Tomasino, I understand by definition he's not an NHL rookie anymore. He can't compete for the Calder, but he played under 35 games last season. He kind of took his time in the American Hockey League, and he's still on his ELC. I could see him being more of an impact player than many think. While I think maybe it's expected for him to make the team out of camp, he could go back to the AHL. I think he could be a guy who could really help transform this top nine, because I think everybody's already penciling in Luke Evangelista as like the rookie to watch. But Philip Tomasino's still there. He still is a pretty big name. And I think because of Luke Evangelista, I think the hype's died down around him. So while maybe he's not the most unexpected player by any means, I think he's lost a little bit of hype around him. I think many people thought he would have been in the NHL by now, but maybe I'm wrong about that.
Well, we'll see. I mean, I've always loved Tomasino, coming up from junior and into the NHL. So I'm hoping he does stick with the team and is successful too. Well, Predators have a lot of good prospects. They drafted a few more guys this past draft, and added Joaquin Kamel last in 2022. They've got some exciting guys. So what do you got as a prospect that everyone should be watching? Doesn't necessarily have to be making the NHL this season, but just someone that everyone should be watching.
I think their first round pick in the 2023 NHL draft, Matthew Wood. I'm a big Matthew Wood fan. He, played for the Victoria Grizzlies, my hometown, so I have a little bit of love for him there. Now he's going to the University of Connecticut. He played there last season, and he's a big boy, right? He's 6'4", 196-ish pounds about, according to Elite Prospects. And Matthew Wood, I think, while he's not going to play in the NHL this season, of course, I think in the next few years, he's going to be an impact player. I think if you can, try to watch some NCAA games this year, Predators fans. I think once he reaches the NHL, he's going to be a reason to go buy tickets.
I love Matthew Wood. If anyone's watched Prospect Corner, he was one of my favorites this past draft coverage. So I'm of that. I love Matthew Wood. So not just because he has the same name as me, but he's a really good player. I wrote his draft profile as well, so I know a lot about him. So he's a really good. I'm excited to see him in the NHL 1.2.
Yeah.
All right, now this could change now because maybe Philip Forsberg is the obvious one, but who's going to lead the team in scoring, forwards and defense?
I think forwards. Or we'll start with defense, because defense I think is the easier one to figure out. So defense, I think it's going to be Roman Josi. I don't think it's surprising to say that he led the team in scoring last year. He led the team in scoring the season prior, scoring 96 points. He's always going to be a point per game threat, and as a defenseman, that's impressive. That is, and I think Roman Josi. There's no other answer. I guess if you want to really try to be creative and think outside the box, you could say Tyson Barrie, but I think you're grasping at straws. I think you're and then forward, up front, I think Philip Forsberg is definitely a good pick. I'm gonna go a little bit outside the box, and I'm gonna say Tommy Novak. Tommy Novak, he had a great kind of coming out party last season. He surprised many people. I know many people who didn't really pay attention to the Predators were kind of just like, whoa, where did this guy come from? And Tommy Novak, he is a little bit older. He's about 26, but he's just about to enter his prime, if not just entering it. And he scored 43 points in 51 games. And, I think he could be that 1A, 1B with O'Reilly. I don't think the Predators have a set in stone first line center. I think they're going to play more of a matchup game, where if you need offense, you're throwing out Tommy Novak. If you need defense, you're putting Ryan O'Reilly out there. But I don't know. I think Tommy Novak. I think he could do it and lead the Predators on offensive scoring. It is a little bit bold because you do have the Philip Forsbergs of the world, like you said. Yeah. But I think I think Tommy Novak's definitely a threat, and I think it's fun to be different a little bit.
Yeah, you never know. He was really good last season too,
Hmm.
right? So, and guys like Cody Glass. I mean, I'm not saying he's going to lead the team in scoring, but we haven't talked about him. So,
Hmm.
Cody Glass is a former first round pick, and he's still kind of coming to his own. Only 24. So, just want to mention him too.
Yeah.
All right, now let's get to some trades. Who do you
Yeah.
see as a guy that could be traded before the deadline here?
I think the easy answer, the correct answer is Tyson Barrie. I know I just went on a long spiel about how the Predators do need offense, but if the Predators are missing the playoffs and by the deadline, if it's pretty clear that you will be missing the playoffs, I think Tyson Barrie is the clear candidate that needs to go. 1 year left on his deal, 4.5 million against the cap, and if you retain on that, Tyson Barrie, a very, very good power play defenseman, he can rack up points for just a hair over 2 million. I think a lot of contenders would definitely bite for that. Um, and then other than that, I mean, their forward core, they don't really have too much to offer. They kind of got rid of in the offseason, whether through buying out, let's say, a Matt Duchene or trading Ryan Johansson.
Mm.
So I think Tyson Barrie is kind of the only other option. I mean, sorry, Tyson Barrie is the only option
Yeah.
unless they finally do trade Dante Fabro. There's been rumors for
Yeah.
forever about that, but I don't know. I think Tyson Barrie's the answer.
Yeah, I mean, he would add a lot of value to a team that's maybe looking for some power play help. He's very good on the power play. We saw in Edmonton. I mean, obviously with Connor McDavid, I think any defenseman on that power play is going to be good, but you never know. I mean, yeah, Barry's really good. I think he could potentially fetch something pretty substantial too at the deadline. Who knows? Maybe a first round pick. Maybe that's high, but yeah, I mean, teams overpay at the deadline sometimes.
Exactly.
All right, last question, and I love these questions because it's bold prediction. So, what do you got for this season?
Can I be a little negative in my bold prediction?
It can be, yeah.
I think the Predators are gonna get as close to bottoming it out as you can. I don't think that they're gonna be worse than the Chicago Blackhawks, but we've seen the scoring struggles in preseason, and while, like I said, you can't read too much into preseason. It does say a little bit. I don't love their forward core. I think they're really going to try to inject some youth into everything, and they're kind of just in that weird team or that weird position where they're not really a rebuilding team. They're kind of in that retooling area, but I don't trust them to compete with the big dogs in that division at all. And I think Barry Trotz is smart enough to know that if this team is looking like a tweener team where they could make the playoffs, but it's not really looking like that if you're fighting with the Calgarys and the Winnipegs again this season, I wouldn't be surprised for him to pull the plug pretty early and get rid of, let's say, the Tyson Berries, maybe finally ship off the Dante Fabros, and we could see the Predators with the top 10 pick next season, maybe top 5.
Wouldn't be bad. There's some really good players in that top 10, top 5. You got some really good defensemen as well to kind of add to this. And the Predators love their defensemen. So,
Imagine.
yeah, they've developed so many good ones over the years. You could do a top 20 list of how many great defensemen they developed. We'll see. I don't know. I think I kind of agree with you. They're an in-between team, I think. I really don't know what to expect, really, because they do have some really good players and some guys that could potentially surprise, or you could see them, barely just be in that middle ground too. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, then with the goaltender like Juuse Saros, I know it's hard to bottom out with a goalie like Juuse Saros and a defenseman like Roman Josi, but I just think just imagining a lineup. I know the positions don't inherently work out, but of Evangelista, Wood, and Celebrini in a few years, I think a season of pain would be worth it for the Predators fans if that's the result.
100%. That'd be an exciting line, that's for sure. All right. Well, thanks, Alex, for coming on the show and previewing the Predators season. It's going to be an interesting one to see how it all kind of falls into place with a new coach, new GM. I don't know what he's going to do during the season to move guys, who knows. But before we leave here, give everyone your social media and where everyone can find your stuff.
Yeah, so if you want to see some of my Predators articles for the Hockey Writers, I'm Alex Wauthy on Twitter, and then on Instagram. Don't post much hockey there, but a little bit, and it's just Alexander Wauthy, and that's about it.
All right. Well, make sure checking out all the coverage at the Hockey Writers for the Predators. I know Alex, you're the only writer, so you've got the coverage right here. So make
Yeah,
sure you're following him throughout the season. I know you're doing that top 25
yeah.
Predators of all time. That's been an interesting series to watch. So that's almost coming to an end, I believe. So
We're getting there. Number 15 came out today. It ends on the Predators season home opener.
there you go. So keep following that series, and sure checking out the Hockey Writers for all our preview stuff throughout the preseason and into the regular season. We got takeaways articles already coming out for preseason games. You know, hockey is almost here. We've got, well, it's here, but regular season hockey is almost here. So yeah, make sure you're giving this video a like. Throw those comments in the section below and subscribe to the YouTube channel if you haven't already. There's also I'm not 100% sure the Nashville Predators Substack is active yet. I can't.
Yes,
It is.
it's
There you
recently
go.
active.
So subscribe to that as well.
Yeah.
And until next time, we'll see you on another episode of the Hockey Writers Roundtable.